Zelensky about upcoming winter. The heating season is about to start and Russia continues to target energy infrastructure. We will help Ukraine in its bold efforts, and I came here to discuss European support, progress on G7 landing. Yes, the Russians continue bombing and attacking Ukraine energy facilities, and Ukrainians have few options: either to force the Russians to stop by signing peace agreement on Ukrainian terms or to continue suffer. As for the first plan about Ukrainian plan, Victor plan, the plan was revealed. A source in the office of president stated that Andrei Yermak believes that the main task for Ukraine is to draw NATO into a direct confrontation with Russia. This is what will allow Ukraine to join the alliance and win the war. We have no alternative scenarios. Reserves and equipment are at a critical levels. We will not be able to withstand a protracted war, which means we need to look for ways to escalate the war and provoke the Kremlin. And you know that everything explains this situation. All these statements explains the situation that took place in the city of Toropets on the territory of Russia. I'll remind you that a few days ago something attacked this warehouse, and as a result of this something attack, huge ammo depot was destroyed. Currently we start receiving the updates and fresh satellite pictures of the consequence of attack, and as you can see, the entire warehouse was completely destroyed. And once again, I'll remind you that according to different sources, this attack was conducted from the territory of the Baltic states, which are basically already members of NATO. Maybe this is exactly the first steps, the first the first events that NATO countries completed with the purpose to show the entire alliance that Russia will not be able to show resistance to these type of attacks. So let's see what is going to be next, but obviously Ukraine and its allies go so very tough and very dangerous way. Now let's begin with the Kursk offensive, another place where Ukrainians try to show the Western countries that it is easy to attack territory of Russia, but as for the current situation at the ground, we see that the Ukrainians are losing. Let's first talk about Glushkova offensive. During the previous nights and during the previous morning, the Ukrainians made a lot of attempts to break through the Russian defense belt with the use of a significant number of armored vehicles and personal carriers and infantry. The Russian sources are saying that there were up to 10 armored vehicles and around 100 soldiers, but those attacks were repelled by the Russian forces. Ukrainians suffered losses and were forced to fall back. Currently, according to information we have, the Ukrainians are trying to bypass the city of Vysyola and to enter the road between Vysyola and the city of Glushkova and to begin moving further in the northeastern direction. Once again, every single attack was repelled by the Russians, and we have from Ukrainian side just one video. In this video we can see the Russian personnel carrier that was located in the northern part of the village, and that was attacked several times by the FPV drone forces of the armored forces of Ukraine and basically destroyed. Ukrainians also can't move further until they finish the situation and handle with the critical situation in the village by the name of Krasnooktyabrski. These territories since the beginning of Ukraine offensive is under complete control of the armored forces of Russian Federation. The Ukrainians made lots of attempts to take under control this small settlement, but every single attack was repelled by the Russians, and seems that Ukrainians currently out of reinforcement reserves and the manpower, and they decided to take this village under control just by the use of drones. If you remember, just yesterday we were talking about robots that Ukrainians were using to attack Russian forces, but later we got additional details that the Russians managed to capture that robot, first to damage with FPV drone and then to capture, so it's like obviously significant loss. And now we start continuing to see videos of how the Ukrainians were FPV flamethrowering Russian positions along the tree lines. So Krasnooktyabrski, the village of Krasnooktyabrski, is under complete and strong Russian control. So as for now, the Ukrainians haven't managed to achieve the results they were planning to achieve. Now let's talk about the Sudzha direction. We have very important updates that are coming from the line between the villages of Darina and Sverdlikova. As you can see, we have a lot of icons exactly in this area. We don't have geolocations, we don't have videos that confirm additional Russian progress, but we have a lot of reports from very reliable sources. The Russian armed forces have liberated the settlements of Darina and Nikolaeva Darina in the Kursk region. This was reported by the Russian government media press RIA Novosti and also by the Major General Apti Alaudin. Dinov. So these territories, these villages were captured. Later we got additional map updates according to different pro-Russian mappers, and as you can see, the Russians liberated or established control not just over villages but also managed to reach the outskirts of the village by the name of Sverdlikova. So summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that by the morning of the 20th of September, the Russians already established control and had strong positions exactly along this line. So this is very deep inside of the territories that used to be under Ukraine control. Of course, if the Russians continue their offensive, the Ukrainians can be completely defeated, and the most dangerous part, the Ukrainians may be encircled by the Russians if the Russians are able to move further in the direction of the village by the name of Lebetivka. Once again, if the Russians can take under control this village as well, this is going to be complete disaster for those Ukrainians who are currently located in the area between the villages of Korенево, Lyubimovka, Tolstoluch, Novoivanovka, Alexandria, Leonidova, Mala Lokne, Stara Nova Sorochna, and Pogribki. So this territory and the Ukrainian forces who are currently located here will be encircled by the Russians, and probably this is exactly what the Russians are trying to do. So let's wait for additional day, because if the Russians reach the outskirts of Sverdlikova, then they will try to push and they will try to speed up the offensive, trying to encircle as many as possible and to force and to make panic among Ukrainian soldiers. As for the eastern flank, we continue receiving a lot of videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces. Probably the Russians are trying to achieve several goals. One of them is to pin down the Ukrainians, not to allow redeploy reinforcements to stabilize the western flank, and another goal is to hold the Ukrainians as long as possible and to encircle them. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction, where we have additional updates. First, let's talk about Kurakhova area. During the previous night, the sources published fire anomalies in the territory. As you can see, the territory is covered with significant number of fire anomalies, which confirms that there are very heavy clashes and that the Russians are pushing. As for Ukraine's Girnik direction, we still haven't received anything, or we still haven't received any reliable source map update about the eastern part of the city, so we are going to keep this area as is. But I'll remind you that just yesterday we were talking that as a result of offensive, the Russians took under control the eastern part of this small town. The Russian sources and pro-Ukrainian mappers reported that Russians continue maintaining the line of combat contact in the fields between Nivoyska and the village of Zhelana Druga. These territories were captured by the Russians, and I would like to point your attention that according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the nearest Ukrainian positions are taking place along the road between Krasnogorovka and Zhelana Druga. So the territory that, according to the military summary map, to the north and to the east of this yellow line, according to pro-Ukraine mappers, is already marked as a gray zone or contested area. The Ukrainians have no positions to the right and onto the top of this line. Everything Ukrainians have just here between Zhelana, Zaryane, and the farms in the northwestern part of Krasnogorovka, which is very interesting and very important, because as we can see, the Ukrainians are finishing the process of evacuation of their personnel and vehicles. Now let's move further and let's talk about the western direction, western Ukraine's direction. We have two icons. According to very reliable mappers, the Russians, as a result of fast lightning attack, managed to take under control the coal mine and the landfill to the west of Ukraine. We're not going to change the map yet. Let's wait for additional updates, but if this information is correct, then the Russians managed to cut a supply road between Selidova and Sukurine and to get closer to complete encirclement of the Ukrainians. The next step, the next target of the Russians is to expand their foothold in the northwestern direction and the southwestern direction, with the purpose to attack Sukurine from behind and to attack Selidova also from the south. We have just one geolocation, and in this video we can see another Ukrainian vehicle that was attacked by the Russian FPV drone. Once again, we'll remember the rule: where the Russian drones are moving, moving. The main Russian army is going to move during the next few days. Let's go to the Pokrovsk area. As you can see, we haven't received anything. Pokrovsk is under very heavy as usually. We continue receiving additional pictures of the consequences of Russian attack without any changes on the ground. Zelensky acknowledged that the situation for the Ukraine armed forces is currently very difficult in the Pokrovsk and Kurachovsky directions. From this territory, we have just one video how the Ukrainians were trying to counterattack the northwestern part of Novogrodovka, but Ukrainian personnel carrier was damaged and destroyed by FPV drone attack. Let's go to the Toretsk agglomeration. The Russians managed to improve their positions a little bit to the west of New York, and as I understand, as a result of clashes, the Russians took under control this stronghold. As for the citadel itself, we have small changes on the ground. Also, according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions a little bit further deep inside of the territory of Toretsk. Let's talk about the Chasiv Yar direction. We haven't received anything special, just lots of videos from the Ukrainian sources of how they were trying to slow down and to destroy the Russians. You know that currently the Russians are storming the city of Chasiv Yar from the northeastern direction, from the village of Kalinovka, and the Russians managed to introduce significant number of forces. Now the Ukrainians are just trying to slow the Russians down. In this video we can see Russian T-80 tank that was destroyed as a result of several FPV drone attacks. Now let's move to the Kupiansk direction. We have some changes on the ground. In this video to the east of Nevska, we can see the video. We can see the episodes of how the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian forces. I'll remind you that just yesterday, pro-Ukrainian mappers shown significant progress of the armored forces of Russian Federation towards the village or towards the river of Zheribets, and now we have geolocation that confirm this progress. Let's increase the numbers of days. So we are talking about this. This is it. This is the not maybe yesterday, maybe in the beginning of the week there was a report. Yes, this is it. We got this report somewhere on the 17th of September. Russian big advance in direction of Nevska, and today on the 20th of September we got geolocation that confirmed this. Furthermore, according to neutral mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions around Makiivka, and as a result of clashes, the Russians took under control the farms. So most likely today or few days later, the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm additional Russian progress and will officially confirm control over the village of Makiivka.